Comics is more than a comic series, more than an LLC, more than an idea. It is a bridge to connect all creators of all levels and unite them in creation and conversation while putting out content to entertain fans and inviting everyone in to the Continuum. Welcome to Continuum Comix Creative Corner, where we invite creators into the Continuum to explore their creations and their creative journey. And tonight I have someone who's been a friend for a good amount of years now. We've done this a few times. I'm happy to have him back. He's an inspiration to creators when you hear his story, and I really wanted him on the program. He was one of the first people I actually wanted on, and I reached out to him. I said, you got to come on this new show. This is Rob. He's got a great name, of course. Introduce yourself. Tell him who you are.
Hi, I'm Rob Multari. I'm the creator and writer of Nightwolf, as well as the founder and self-publisher through Lone Wolf Comics. That's my personal imprint. Not that I'm, so much a lone wolf, but I pretty much do majority of the work. Except for the art, I have to have the good art there. Thanks for having me again, Rob. And I'm glad to help out with this new series that you got going on, and I appreciate and I'm honored to be back and hanging with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to get to the Nightwolf, definitely. That'll be in our part 2 series. But right now, we want to deep dive into you a little bit. We want to talk about, the basics of stuff. Because one of the things that we don't realize is the different places we're from shape us. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in western Pennsylvania, a place called West Middlesex. It's north of Pittsburgh, south of Erie, and about equal distance south of Cleveland, Ohio. So like right on the Ohio border. And, that's born and raised. And that's, I live in Sharpsville, which is not too far from my hometown right now with my wife and kids.
So let me ask you a question. How was your first experience getting a comic book? Before anything else, you have to have access to it. How did you first have comic books be accessible to you?
So, back when I was a kid and around like first grade era, I was struggling with reading because I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia. And so kind of as a test, like my mom got me this, it was a 3-piece set of Batman, The Untold Tales. And it came with a cassette tape. That like basically had actors reading the word bubbles, and it was kind of like one of those things where I could follow along and listen and then kind of try and associate the words in the word bubbles with what the actors are saying on cassette tape. So that was like my first jaunt into comics, and so my mom came up with the idea of if I did well in school, tried hard, and behaved, I would get 3 comics a week. And back then that was like, between 50 cents and $1 per issue. And so from there we started going to like our local news agency that had them not even on a spinner rack. They actually had a whole section of just comics. And it was kind of like set up like Barnes & Noble is now, like where they have like the graphic novels set up. They like actually had a section just of single issues. And that was before I discovered that we actually had a local comic shop a few years later down the road. But, again, that was my first go-to place was the news agency and getting the latest stuff of the racks that week.
But there had to be a moment in there. There had to be that moment, like you hear Jack's getting excited. There had to be that moment where you were dragged in. We all have that moment. For me, it was the X-Men. And like you, it started in a different media. I was a pilot for the X-Men where Wolverine was Australian for some reason.
The pride of the X-Men.
Yeah, exactly. So that dragged me in, and then I had to learn to read. But you were given something. What was the moment where you identified with the character, or you were just like, this is for me?
I think so. For me, the same. Like I came in watching cartoons. In the 80s, I grew up watching great, cartoons. He-Man, Transformers, all that. And then Spider-Man, His Amazing Friends, and Batman and Robin. There was like a ton of cartoons and Ninja Turtles. So, but then once I discovered that like they weren't just cartoons and they were comics, I recognized that on the stand. So I picked a couple of those up, and then I was like, you know, and same with you, like Pride of the X-Men really like got my interest. Like, you know, we used to rent DVD or not DVDs, VHSs, you know, quite often, you know, on the weekends, like we had like a local deal, get 5 for $5 and to rent and watch. And I watched the crap out of them. And that was one of them that I kept, you know, I would like just keep watching it. And yeah, I thought Wolverine was Australian for a long, long time because of that. And, you know, but then like I saw the Marvel logo. I had a couple of Spider-Mans. I have some Hulk issues back when he was the Gray Hulk, which confused me because I watched the Hulk cartoon when he was green. So that was another confusing time for me there. But so when I was putting 2 and 2 together, I'm like, okay, that has a Marvel logo. That has a Marvel logo. I'm recognizing the brand, right? And then I went to the comic shop, well, to the newsstand that week, and shortly after, and I saw Wolverine, you know, like same suit and everything. Like, you know, it was the burgundy with the yellow, you know, color looking suit. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is the same, you know, like these are all like tied in somehow. And I think I got a cover that had Iron Man, like busting through the floor, holding up the Hulk. That was like one of my, I was like, oh, well, these guys all live in the same place. So that blew my mind. So like, I really gravitated towards Wolverine and the X-Men, but the fact that like Marvel had this universe of characters that all lived together in the same, and like they could cross over, was like, I think that was the pivotal moment in my, like, that I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a bigger thing than just one book. You know what I mean? So I think that really like brought it home to me and was really like, I have to get them all to find out what happens.
There is definitely that learning curve as a fan. Like, wait a minute, what just happened? I just watched this television show. When I got right into the X-Men for the show were gone. I was sitting in the middle of this. There are all these new characters. Storm was a kid. Why is Storm a kid? Why does Wolverine have a patch? Why is there a patch on Wolverine's eye? I know
because those same characters that were in the Pride of the X-Men were in that video game too. You remember the X-Men arcade game? So like it was very like, wait a minute, what's happening? But then I saw Jim Lee's art, you know, like when he started taking over, I was really blown away. And like I think so my favorite era was the Chris Claremont Jim Lee run. And when they split off and did the gold team and the blue team, I was obsessed. I mean, I had all the books, you know, and I had all the action figures like right above me. You can't see it, but I have a shelf that has blue team, gold team, like all like the original ones, you know, from like whenever they first did that. Like it literally split on either side in their teams with villains on either side. Like those action figures that I had.
Pictures or it didn't happen, Rob. I expect pictures now. That is awesome, but absolutely. So we have that moment where you fall in love with it. But what was the moment where you were like, hey, wait, the people actually do this? Can I do it? Like, what was that moment where you suddenly decided, now I have to do this?
I think that wasn't until like later on in junior high. So it was like early junior high. Like I started like getting into coming up with my own characters, and you know there are some things that I wished would come. Like I was already at that point like deep into stories, and things were changing, and you know I kind of wanted that like to kind of come back. So like I made my own X-Men team as a fan, you know, fan fiction, which I had no idea what that was at the time. So I just sent you the picture. But yeah, so I mean that was to me like I like started to do that. I think I was 13 when I had I wrote like I made an entire X-Men team. It was kind of like you know, like when New Mutants came in or when Gen X came in, like I had my own like team of like spin-off X-Men. And then I wrote a storyline, like wrote a huge thing. And this was right after I had read the graphic novel for Extinction Agenda. And like, so I was like deep into the Genoshan like story, and I like, you know, I kind of brought that back into play. Wolverine getting his claws, his adamantium claws back, because I was like, there was a period of time where I was like, okay, bring back the adamantium. We need the adamantium, you know? So I was like, I wrote my own way in to get that in there. So I sent all these stories to Stan Lee, well, thinking I was sending them to Stan Lee. And I got this kind rejection letter, you know, from Marvel saying, hey, you know, Stan appreciates his fans sending in stuff. You know, your stuff's great, you know, but we already have our storylines planned out years in advance. But they encouraged me to keep up my writing, you know, and my art. So, you know, for me as a 13-year-old, that was like fire, you know what I mean? Like, that was like, I can do this.
That's certainly better than the cease and desist that you would get now at your age.
Oh, that's exactly right, too.
Right now, to be like, sir, stop it or it'll make you hurt. Now, you talked about Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, obviously like two big names. Were there any other creative influences that really got you like stimulated to want to create and take it to another level? Because I know for me, like you see creators creating, and I'm the type of person where I'm always looking at the people who are always putting out products. So who are the people who even nowadays who are inspiring you?
I mean, you know, Todd Mcfarlane's always been a big one. I mean, I followed Spawn from when he left Marvel to the beginning of Image. I mean, I have like all the early issues of Spawn. I have the original action figures that, you know, came out in like 96 or 95, somewhere around there. You know, so, and then obviously when he did the big Kickstarter for the reboot, you know, of course I wanted them, but I couldn't afford them. But thankfully I have an awesome wife. So for my Father's Day and anniversary gift, I got all three of those, you know, the Spawn figures, like at that high tier. And I was like, yes.
I'm sure that was a big moment.
Oh yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. Finish that thought.
Yeah, I was gonna say, also like as far as like, you know, story wise, like, you know, Michael Turner, like his art and stuff, like with Witchblade and, you know, and then just in general, I think like the indies that were coming out in the 90s, like had a lot of influence too. Like, I mean, I was still heavily into like Marvel and DC. I would kind of like go in and out of, like, I was always a big Batman fan. Like that was the only one that I think I have, you know, runs on, you know, but occasionally I pick up yeah, see, there's my blue team and my gold team.
That's official right there, ladies and gentlemen. Now that is how you properly display your X-Men characters. I love it. Real quick, because we're at 13 minutes. We only have 2 minutes left. You're talking right now. What are the goals that you have? Every creator has goals. Right now, what is the goal that is really driving you at the moment?
I think just like to be able to tell my stories. Like, I don't, you know, Nightwolf is one out of many titles that I want to put out there. Like, I want to make my own world, like, you know, like that the big ones have, you know, shared existing with crossovers and stuff. Like, I mean, that's my thing, you know. I mean, I actually have a big world-ending event with like my main titles that I want to put out, but you know, getting there that's the journey, you know. That's how I'm digging in, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is one of those things, and we're going to be talking about all the things that you have created in our next segment, especially the Nightwolf, and we'll get into the campaign that you have that's live right now. But just in case anyone's not watching it, just a quick pitch for what Nightwolf is.
Yeah, so Nightwolf is a story about a young man who finds out that he was born a werewolf and gets thrown into a supernatural war against demons, witches, vampires, other werewolves. And basically this 18-year-old, you know, has to, you know, pick up the pieces where his life gets ripped away and he has to move on, you know, and find his way through it with the help of a female werewolf, Snowpaw.
Well, let me tell you guys, I've seen it. I have the postcard that says I'm part of the Wolf Pack. So I'm a big fan of this man's work. Go to Kickstarter right now if you're watching this before the June 9th. After June 9th, you can still follow Rob to see what's next, because trust me, there'll be something next. We'll be back with part 2 in just a minute. But for now, this is the Continuum. Continuum Comix is more than a comic series, more than an LLC, more than an idea. It is a bridge to connect all creators of all levels and unite them in creation and conversation while putting out content to entertain fans and inviting everyone in to the Continuum.